The rain wasn't just falling. It was hammering down, trying to drown the world. In the deep, humid heart of Sri Lanka, night doesn't fall gently, it crashes. Mark, an American engineer working on a bridge project down south, hated these late-night drives. The shortcut through the old rubber plantation was a mistake. He knew it the moment his headlights cut through the thick, supernatural mist hanging between the identical rows of rubber trees. They stood like gaunt, twisted skeletons, their bark scarred from years of tapping for latex. The locals had warned him, "Don't travel alone after midnight, Mahataya," his foreman Sunil had said, his eyes wide with ancient fear. "She waits on lonely roads, the lady in white, Mohini." Mark had laughed. He was a man of science, of concrete and steel. He didn't believe in jungle spirits that preyed on lonely men. His old Jeep gave a violent shudder and died. The sudden silence was louder than the engine. He turned the key. Nothing, just the rhythmic, suffocating drumming of rain on the metal roof. He checked his phone. No signal, of course. "Damn it," he muttered, the sound of his own voice startling him. He had two choices: wait here until morning in this oppressive darkness, or walk the 3 miles to the main junction. He grabbed his heavy flashlight and stepped out into the deluge. The air instantly soaked his clothes, heavy with the smell of wet earth and ozone. He started walking. The beam of his flashlight cut a weak tunnel through the dark. Every shadow seemed to move just outside his vision. The silence of the plantation was heavy. No crickets, no night birds, just the rain and the squelch of his boots on the muddy track. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was primal, an instinct buried deep in the human brain that screams when a predator is near. The hairs on his arms stood straight up, defying the cold rain. He kept walking, faster now, trying to outpace his own growing irrational fear. He told himself it was just the isolation, just the stories getting into his head. And then he saw it. About 50 yards ahead, where the road curved sharply around a massive banyan tree, a figure stood in the middle of the track. Mark stopped dead. He squinted through the rain. It was a woman. She was standing perfectly still, facing away from him. Even from this distance and through the blurring rain, her silhouette was striking. She was dressed entirely in white, a traditional sari that seemed to glow faintly against the overwhelming darkness. Her long, raven-black hair cascaded down her back, reaching almost to her waist, soaked and clinging to her slender frame. Why was a woman out here, alone, at 1 a.m. in a monsoon deluge? "Hello?" Mark called out. His voice cracked slightly. "Are you all right? Do you need help?" The figure didn't move. She just stood there, weeping silently into the rain.
Mark hesitated. His rational mind screamed at him to run, to turn back into the dark and sprint away. But the sight of a lone woman in distress overridden his survival instinct. He was a fixer by nature. He saw a problem. He had to solve it. "Miss," he called again, stepping closer. The mud sucked at his boots, making every step a struggle. As he got within 10 feet of her, he was hit by a wall of scent. It wasn't the smell of rain or rotting leaves anymore. It was floral, sweet, cloying, and intoxicatingly strong. Jasmine. It was the scent of funerals and weddings. Here, in the middle of a desolate rubber estate, the smell was so thick it felt like it was coating the back of his throat. The woman slowly turned around. Mark's breath hitched. He had expected fear, tears, or maybe the ravaged face of a mad woman. He didn't expect beauty. She was unearthly. Her skin was the color of moonlight, impossibly pale against the wet darkness. Her lips were a deep, bruised crimson. Her eyes were large, dark pools that seemed to absorb the weak beam of his flashlight, reflecting nothing back. In her arms, she cradled a small bundle wrapped in white cloth. The crying was coming from there, a high, thin wail that set Mark's teeth on edge. "Are you lost?" Mark asked, lowering his flashlight so as not to blind her. He felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to protect her. The fear was fading, replaced by a strange, heavy drowsiness. "My Jeep broke down back there. I'm walking to the junction." She didn't speak. She just looked at him with those deep, void-like eyes. Then she took a step closer. She moved with a fluid grace, as if her feet weren't quite touching the muddy ground. "The baby," she whispered. Her voice was like wind chimes, soft, melodic, but with an underlying dissonance. It didn't sound like it came from her throat. It sounded like it came from inside Mark's own head. "He is cold." Mark nodded dumbly. I have a jacket. In the Jeep. We can go back." She shook her head slowly. The jasmine scent grew stronger, dizzying him. She looked down at her sari. The white fabric was soaked, clinging to her body. She looked distressed, fumbling with the pleats of her garment as if they were coming undone. "Please," she murmured, stepping right up to him. He could feel the cold radiating off her, not the cold of the rain, but the deep, dry chill of an old freezer. She extended her arms, offering the bundle to him. "Hold him," she pleaded, her red lips curving into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just for a moment, while I fix my dress." Mark knew somewhere deep in his reptilian part of his brain that he should not take that bundle. Every alarm bell in his body was ringing. Don't touch it. Don't touch her. But her eyes were locked onto his. He felt paralyzed, hypnotized by the dark swirls in her irises. "Okay," Mark whispered. His voice sounded miles away. "I'll hold him." He reached out. Her fingers brushed against his wrists as he took the child. The contact burned like dry ice. He flinched, but the bundle was already in his arms. It was heavier than it looked, much heavier. And the moment the weight settled into his hands, the crying stopped. Silence returned to the jungle. Even the rain seemed to hold its breath.
Mark looked down at the bundle in his arms. He pulled back the wet cloth to see the baby's face. Behind him, he heard a sound, a low, guttural growl that transformed into a shriek of laughter. "Thank you," the voice said, but it wasn't the soft, melodic voice anymore. It was a rasping, ancient sound, like grinding stones. Mark looked up. The beautiful woman was gone.
Mark looked down on the bundle. The white cloth had fallen away. It wasn't a baby. Staring back at him was a face that looked like it had been carved out of ancient, rotting wood. The skin was gray and shriveled. Its eyes were two burning coals of malice, glowing red in the darkness. Its mouth was split wide open, revealing rows of jagged, needle-like teeth that were stained black. The thing in his arms wasn't crying anymore. It was grinning. "Dad, Dad," it rasped. Mark screamed. It was a raw, primal sound that tore through his throat. He tried to throw the creature down, but it clung to him. Its limbs, surprisingly strong and clawed, dug into his jacket, piercing the skin of his chest. The weight of it increased every second. It felt like he was holding a boulder. It was crushing his ribs. With a final desperate surge of adrenaline, Mark ripped the creature off his chest and hurled it into the muddy darkness. It hit the ground with a wet thud, but instead of crying, it let out a high-pitched, mocking giggle that echoed through the rubber trees. Mark stumbled backward, his flashlight beam swinging wildly. "Who are you? What are you?" He swung the light toward where the woman had stood. She was back, but the beautiful, sad woman in the sari was gone. Hovering 3 feet off the ground was a nightmare. Her skin was no longer pale. It was blue and mottled like a drowned corpse. Her eyes were white orbs, devoid of pupils, rolling madly in their sockets. Her mouth unhinged, dropping open to an impossible length, and a long, pointed tongue, red and dripping with saliva, lolled out, swaying like a snake. The smell of jasmine was gone, replaced by the overpowering stench of rotting meat and sulfur. She didn't walk. She drifted toward him, her long black hair writhing around her head like living tentacles. Mark turned to run. He scrambled toward his jeep, slipping in the mud, gasping for air. He could hear her behind him, not footsteps, but the sound of heavy breathing and the rustle of silk moving unnaturally fast. He reached the jeep. He fumbled for the door handle. It was locked. He had locked it from the inside. Click. He fumbled for his keys. His hands were shaking so violently, he dropped them. They disappeared into the mud. He fell to his knees, clawing at the black earth, trying to find the metal keys. A shadow fell over him. The air turned freezing cold. He looked up. She was floating directly above him. Her long red tongue dripped a thick, dark liquid on his face. It burned like acid. She leaned down, her face inches from him. "You held him," she whispered, her voice sounding like dry leaves skittering on pavement. "You accepted him. Now you belong to us." Her jaw snapped open. Mark screamed one last time, but the sound was cut short by the darkness. The aftermath. The next morning, Sunil and the work crew found the jeep.
It was parked on the side of the road, covered in dew. The driver's door was open. "Mark, sir," Sunil called out, walking towards the vehicle. There was no sign of Mark, no footprints leading away into the jungle, no struggle. Inside the jeep, on the driver's seat, lay two things: Mark's flashlight, its batteries dead, and a piece of white cloth smelling faintly of jasmine.